Hey RVers! On Monday, I did a live workshop walking through how to diagnose appliances in your RV. We had a couple technical issues on that workshop, and I had to end it early due to losing some sound. So I thought I would re-record with sound the whole time and post it to YouTube so everyone could see the whole thing, and people that weren't able to make it on Monday could still get to join. I know this isn't live, so you're not going to get your questions answered in real time, but if any questions do come up, let me know in the comments and I'll try to answer them as they come in. Okay, let's dive into it. Hi, hello everybody, and welcome to how to diagnose any appliance in your RV. Let's jump into it. You might be thinking to yourself, who the heck is this woman? I have people that have found me through Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I might even have a couple people from Twitter or X or whatever it is we're calling it these days. And so not everybody knows who I am and what my background is. Well, my name is Emily. I'm actually a certified mobile RV repair tech. What does that mean? I actually have my own business. It's called RV Repairwoman, and that is how I pay my bills. My 9-to-5 is driving around and helping people fix their RVs. I try to focus on the electrical side of the house part of your RV, so namely your appliances. That's why I'm putting on this workshop. The certified part means that I went to school specifically to learn about how to solve problems in your RV. I'm not just a general electrician, I'm an RV electrician. This is how I make my money. I drive around in this beat up C2500. If you've been following me on Instagram, you will know the trials and tribulations I've had with my truck. But, you know, she runs about 90% of the time, and she just doesn't like driving in the rain. And she currently doesn't have air conditioning, which is very unfortunate given we live in Las Vegas, but we're making it work. And this is what I do every day. I drive around in this truck helping people with their RVs. I've been doing that for coming up on 2 years now, somewhere in there. And before that, I spent about a decade building weird things for the live entertainment industry. I'm talking about props and sets, lighting, electrical, hydraulics, you name it. I've probably been involved with it in some way for some show on the Las Vegas Strip. This was really what I was into, and then COVID hit, and I got to see sort of the side of the industry that was not as exciting, namely not being employed. So I decided it was time for a switch up, and I decided to take that decade of custom fabrication and electronics experience that I had and transfer it over to fixing RVs, so that way I could work for myself. I always found it really funny when I was at RV school. Occasionally the teachers would be like, you don't want to work on this RV, or you don't want to work on that kind of RV because it's going to be the weirdest thing you've ever worked on. And I was always like, hey, listen, build a table to saw a lady in half, and then talk to me about the weirdest thing you've worked on. My last big girl job that I finally quit in order to start my own business was building illusions for magicians. I think I was at that job for like 4 years. And so every day I was going in, you know, making things to saw ladies in half, make women disappear, all sorts of craziness. Name a magician, I've probably built something for them. But enough about me. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on who I am. What are you going to learn today? We are going to first peel back the curtain, you know, I love a good entertainment metaphor, on the service industry when it comes to RVs and why calling a tech may not always be the right call. We're then going to do a really quick summary of the DC voltage test. And then I'm going to walk you through step by step how to diagnose a Suburban water heater. We're going to test all of the components of a Suburban water heater. And then I'm going to walk you through how to take what we learned about the Suburban water heater and apply it to almost any appliance in your RV. Okay? Stick with me till the end, and I'm going to show you how you can get some wiring diagrams and some cheat sheets that are going to make diagnosing any water heater as easy as 1, 2, 3. Whether you have a Dometic, an Atwood, a Suburban, whether it's gas or electric, I've got you covered. As long as it's a tanked water heater, these are gonna help you a lot. So I'll give you the link for that at the end if you stick with me. Before we dive in deep to the nitty gritty, if you've got your phone out, you got distractions going on, put them to the side. Pull out a pen and paper. I'm about to drop a ton of really great nuggets and I don't want you to miss anything. But let's jump into it. Something stops working in your RV. Who are you gonna call? I wanna go real quick why maybe calling a tech shouldn't be the first thing that you think about. You know, I'm not saying never call a tech, I would be out of a business, but I want to get people in a place where their first thing they think of is maybe I should try to solve this problem. Maybe I don't need to call a tech. And here's a couple of reasons why. One, techs can be expensive. Good labor isn't cheap. Cheap labor isn't good. And when it comes to RVs, you're getting pretty niche. So you need someone that knows specifically about fixing RVs. You know, a general plumber isn't gonna know what to do with your plumbing in your RV. A general electrician could probably figure it out, but they're not gonna know the specifics about the appliances in your RV. They don't see them every day. A certain big box RV store near me that I've been jokingly calling Housing Planet, but my diehard RVers that have been this for a while know what kind of store I'm referencing. They're currently charging almost a $500 minimum for mobile RV work. So basically, if they drive to you to help you with your RV, you are paying at least $500. Even if they just come out and flick a switch, you're paying 500 bucks. Where I get this number, because some people have asked, they charge almost $250 an hour, and they have a 2-hour minimum, and that 2 hours start when they leave their shop. So if your RV is parked a half hour away from the shop, then an hour of that 2 hours is just for them driving to and from you. So that $500 is really just getting you 1 hour of this tech being with you in your RV, which is wild to me when you think about how often things go wrong in RVs. All right, Emily, you might be thinking, I want to avoid the upcharge of having to call a mobile tech. I'm just going to take it to a shop. Well, if you've had to interact with shops anytime in the last 4 years, you know the wait times at RV shops right now are insane. They're through the roof. You can sometimes be waiting for weeks just for somebody to see you. I've heard stories of RVs disappearing into shops for months only to be returned and not actually have the things fixed that the person wanted. There's just so many RVs out there right now and there's not enough techs. So the wait time at shops is just so long right now. And I know for some of my full-timers, losing your RV for an indeterminate amount of time is not an option for you. That's your home. You can't lose that for weeks to months at a time. Also, just peeling back the curtain on specifically how a lot of these big box shops are set up, the techs in the shops are not as incentivized with the way that their pay structure works to solve problems. They're paid to replace units. And what I mean by this is the way that warranty companies pay out, the way that insurances pay out, and the way that the tech's pay structure is set up. I'm gesturing to myself as if I work in one of these shops. If I was a tech there, a lot of times their pay structure is set up in a way where they make extra for the hours that they spend fixing a problem, and they don't get paid any extra money for the time that they spend diagnosing a problem. So let's say your air conditioner stopped working. That tech could take, let's say 45 minutes to diagnose that maybe it was just your control box that was the problem. Control box, less than $100 part, and is pretty quick to change out. So they've just spent 45 minutes that they're not making extra money to diagnose a part that's pretty cheap, and they spend very little time switching out. So they didn't make a lot of extra money on that call. Whereas if they spent no time diagnosing and just said, you have a bad air conditioner, they now make extra money on the time that they're spending replacing the air conditioner, and they're gonna make extra money on the markup of you having to buy an expensive new air conditioner. So I have literally been in trainings with a lot of these new techs or techs from these shops. They're not, a lot of them are not new. A lot of them have been in the industry for a long time. But I'll be in trainings with them. The last one I can think of specifically, the instructor was walking us through the specifics on how to diagnose the control box of a Furrion air conditioner. And they were like, yep, if you just do this one test, you can see that it's just like this simple part as opposed to the whole unit. And the techs sitting behind me were from these big box RV stores, and they were literally laughing. They were like, yeah, we will never do this. Our managers don't want us doing this. We're not incentivized to do this. We literally, as soon as you come in and tell us your air conditioner is acting up, we replace the whole thing. And my jaw truly hit the floor the first time I heard this, but I've been to subsequent trainings with other techs from these big box stores, and I hear the same story every time. It is wild to me. I'm not trying to knock shops from these techs, or from techs from these shops. And I know that there are some really wonderful techs out there that work for these places. They're just not incentivized to do this kind of dig deep diagnostic work with the way that they're paid. And it's kind of sad, honestly, that that's the way the industry is moving. And then for my ladies out there, men, if you just want to go la 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 just for a second, my ladies, I know that we put off calling for help sometimes when we need it because we're nervous that, honestly, a male tech is going to show up and talk down to us in our own space. I know because I get calls from women every week with this same story. They're like, are you really a woman who's gonna show up and not talk down to me? And I'm like, yes. I'm exactly what you get in the videos. This is me. But I have also done it. Hands up, I've also put up calling for help in my Sticks and Bricks house when we've needed help because I just didn't want to have a man show up and tell me about everything I was doing wrong in my own space. This is part of why I put out so much free content showing all RVers, but specifically women, how to diagnose some of their problems on their own. I want everyone to feel confident and comfortable in their own space, and I want you to not be putting off fixing your fridge because you're nervous about somebody talking down and being condescending to you in your space, okay? So we've gone over why maybe calling a tech isn't always going to be the first thing that we're going to do. I'm not saying never call a tech, I would be out of a business, but I'm saying, hey, maybe the next time something goes wrong, let's take a quick crack at it and see if we can't solve the problem ourselves. So when something goes wrong in your RV, I want you to think M.A.P, okay? Next time something goes wrong and you're about to pick up that phone, put the phone down and go, Emily told me M.A.P. M.A.P stands for multimeter, AC or DC, pathway, okay? So let's start with multimeter. When I was doing this live, this was going to be the point that I asked if there was anyone who had not touched a multimeter before or had not seen the first video of my Save $5,000 in 5 Days challenge. If you're here watching this on YouTube and you have never touched a multimeter before, I'm about to go through the DC voltage test specifically really quickly as a summary. But if you're like, whoa, she went through that too quickly, excuse me, just know you're just gonna set up the meter like I show you, and then I'll show you where to put the probes and how to do the tests and what you're looking for. But if you want a more in-depth explanation, check out, there'll be a link popping up to that playlist, my How to Save $5,000 playlist. And the first video is gonna walk through this DC voltage test in more detail. So the voltage test, real quickly as a summary, we have two types of electricity in our RV, AC, and DC. The AC power comes from plugging in, and our DC power comes from the batteries. We all know, we've experienced this. Even if you're not an electrician, you know that some things in your RV don't work unless you're plugged in. And there's a whole set of things that still work even when you're not plugged in. So the things that work when you're not plugged in, those are DC power. They're coming from your batteries. And the things that only work when you are plugged in, those tend to be AC. Okay? So to test the DC appliances, we're gonna need to set up our meter for DC volts. So pull out a multimeter. I was floored when I gave this workshop live, how many people were telling me that they went out and purchased a Klein CL800 off of my recommendation. Amazing, that's so cool. If this multimeter here on the right is intimidating to you, know that you can do the DC voltage test on basically any meter that you can find. This is the cheapest multimeter from Harbor Freight. On a cheapo meter, you're just looking for a section labeled DCV for DC volts. And with these simpler meters, they're not very sophisticated. So we need to tell it roughly what range of voltage we're expecting to see. Do we need it to be really fine and precise because we're looking at really small amounts? Or does it need to widen out because we're about to send a lot of voltage through this thing? Okay? When it comes to RVs and DC voltage, we're looking for something in the realm of 12 volts because that's what comes from our batteries. So we're gonna set this meter to 20 because that's the closest number that it has to 12. On a fancier meter, for all my people that went and purchased a Klein, I love you, you're just gonna set that dial to the V setting for voltage. And then you can hit that orange button to toggle between AC volts and DC volts. If you look where that arrow is pointing, you see there's a straight line. That straight line tells us that we are in DC volts. If that line was a squiggly line, then we would know that we were in AC volts. I believe off the top of my head, when you first crank it over, it'll be on AC. So you're just gonna hit that orange button once and you'll be ready to test DC volts. So that's how to set up your multimeter, at least for the one test that we're gonna need for most of today. But when you have a problem show up in your RV, I'm gonna want you to think, is this an AC appliance or a DC appliance? Because you're not gonna have Emily all the time sitting there telling you which one to set it to. That's where we start thinking, does this appliance only work when I'm plugged in, or will it work even when I'm not plugged in? So that's gonna tell us if it works on AC power or DC power. Things that work off of AC power are gonna be our air conditioner, our microwave, all of our outlets, our fridge when we set it to auto, if we have an absorption style fridge, and our water heater on electric, if you have a water heater that has that option. Things that work off of DC power are going to be our lights, our slides, our leveling jacks. All of your propane appliances, so like your furnace, your water heater when it's on gas, your fridge when it's on gas, all of those are gonna have a circuit board in them that works off of DC power. So we can still turn these things on and off when we're not plugged in. And then the other thing that really confuses people sometimes are what I call the fart fans. Basically that fan in your bathroom that you turn on after you do your business to take out the smells. Those work off of DC power as well. So if you ever have a problem with one of those, you're gonna set that meter to DC volts in order to test it. A lot of people think those are AC for some reason. They're DC, they work off of your batteries. The one minor hiccup here, just to make this a little more confusing, for our AC appliances, like our fridge, our water heater, and our air conditioner, they all have circuit boards inside them making decisions. Parts of those circuit boards usually work off of DC power, just to make things a little confusing. The way I usually explain it is that the DC side of things tends to be the brains of the situation, whereas the AC side of things tends to be the muscle. So if we think about like an air conditioner, the air conditioner is going to make decisions to turn on and off. Otherwise, it would just keep running continuously all the time. So the parts of the air conditioner that are making the decision on whether or not to turn on or off are going to be DC power. And then the parts of the air conditioner that are actually doing the cooling, like the compressor and the fan, those are going to be AC power because we need extra muscle to turn those things on. A lot of the times on the circuit board, the DC parts and the AC parts will be separate in order to make testing easier, but that's not always the case. So that's just a little extra hiccup if you're starting to test the AC side of things. Just know you're going to run into some DC components here or there. But today, we're going to be talking about a Suburban water heater, and we're going to be talking about just the gas side of the Suburban water heater. So if we go back to what's an AC appliance, what's a DC appliance, this is going to be a propane appliance. So it's going to work off of DC voltage, okay? It's got a circuit board in there making decisions whether or not to turn the water heater on or off, and that's gonna work off of DC power. So we figured out how to set up our multimeter, and we've answered the question, is this an AC appliance or a DC appliance? So now all we need to know about is the path that the electricity takes. When I think about the path of electricity, I always think of the map from Dora. This may not be a reference that really hits for my audience, but I was raised on a whole lot of Dora. I cannot speak a lick of Spanish because of it, but when my parents needed to sit me down and give me something to watch to get me out of the way, Dora was what it was most of the time. And if you don't know, in an episode of Dora, she might have to go on a mission to solve a problem, and so she would pull out the map, and the map would sing his little song and then tell her the steps of where she needed to go. And the steps for Dora might be something like she needs to go over the mountain and through the woods to get to grandmother's house. But if we were trying to track down Dora and see where she was at, if she made it over the mountain and went into the woods but never came out, then we would know that the woods was her problem, okay? We don't need to look for her at grandmother's house because we know she didn't make it out of the woods. So we could make the woods easier to get through, we could take the woods out completely, or we could fix whatever it was in the woods that stopped her. But we know primarily the woods is what we need to look at because we know that's what stopped her. This is going to go and be the same thing in a circuit. So Dora might need to go through a fuse, through a thermostat, through a control box, and go back home. But if Dora makes it through the fuse and into the thermostat and doesn't come out, then we know that the thermostat is most likely our problem. We don't even need to go testing this control box because we know she didn't even make it out of the thermostat. So most likely in this scenario, we would either fix the thermostat or replace the thermostat, and that would probably solve our problem. The thing I want you to think of, and the main takeaway I want you to have today, is that if power makes it into something and doesn't come out of it, then that part is going to be your problem, okay? So this is like a very simple wiring diagram. It's very similar to a map. We're looking at a journey. We're seeing where the electricity is supposed to go. This is what the map usually looks like in real life. This is something called a wiring diagram. It looks a little more complicated, but I want you to just think of it like a map. Dora, or electricity, is always going to start at a place labeled VDC in. Sometimes it's labeled 12 plus, sometimes it's just labeled plus. You're looking for something that's saying this is the starting point, okay? That's for the DC side of things as a bonus for any of my people that know how to use their meter and want to test the 120 side. If you were looking at a 120 appliance, on the wiring diagram, it may say something like 120 plus, or AC in, AC volts in, something like that. Okay, so there's a pretty clear point where power comes into this wiring diagram. And then any symbol that looks like this with sort of three lines that get smaller and smaller, that's going to be our ground, or basically the end of Dora's journey. This is the ground symbol. You're gonna see it across all kinds of appliances, whether or not it's AC volts, DC volts, all of the above. You're gonna see a grounding symbol like this. And that basically means that this is the end of Dora's journey, and we can follow her to all of these endpoints, okay? This is the wiring diagram. It's a custom color-coded one that I made for a Suburban water heater. If you don't know what type of water heater you have, you can open up the compartment and you will see if it looks silver on the back like this, it's a Suburban. If the whole thing was black and it had a black circuit board in the upper right-hand corner, that means you have an Atwood or a Dometic water heater. Dometic bought out Atwood a while ago, so whether you have an Atwood or a Dometic, they are wired the same, okay? They're exactly the same. They just changed names partway through. I also have wiring diagrams for a Suburban gas and electric, an Atwood or Dometic gas-only water heater, an Atwood or Dometic gas and electric water heater. And if you stick with me to the end, I'll give you a link for how to get those color-coded wiring diagrams, and they'll have numbers on them. So it'll literally be like 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'll know you're gonna test at 1 first, then at 2, then at 3, then at 4. This is how we're gonna make diagnosing your water heater truly as easy as 1, 2, 3. So I'll give you the link for that at the end, don't need to worry. But let's follow this wiring diagram. Let's see how to read it. So Dora's gonna start at that 12 volts in, and she's gonna go down this red wire into some heat sensors. Okay, I'm gonna show you what that looks like in real life in just a second. But you're going to see that we have 2 heat sensors, one on top of the other. The one on the top is going to be called a T-stat or thermostat, and the one on the bottom is going to be an ECO. The job of the T-stat is just turn the water heater on or off, depending on if the temperature inside of the tank is the temperature that we want. If it's not hot enough, the T-stat's gonna let power through. If we're already at temp, then it's just gonna open up and not let power through, so we don't keep heating up the water past what we want. The ECO's job is to just be a backup to the T-stat. So for whatever reason this guy failed and still let the water heater stay on even though the water was the temperature we wanted, the ECO is going to be a backup and it's going to shut things down at a higher temperature. So this guy is supposed to be turning on and off all the time. The ECO is just supposed to be turning off if for whatever reason the T-stat failed. He's just a safety as a backup. But here's what they look like in real life. You're gonna go to this black box on your Suburban water heater. It's attached with 2 screws. Unscrew those screws and that black box should pop right off. You're gonna see something that looks like this underneath. My pictures today are for a Suburban water heater that is both electric and gas. We're just gonna be talking about the gas side today. But just know that if you had just a gas-only water heater, it would just have this part on the right. But if it's a gas or electric, you might have this part on the left. The one on the left is for the electric side of things. The one on the right is for the gas side of things. And as a bonus for any of my advanced people that know about the AC volts test, you can test this part on the left exactly the same as how I'm about to show you how to test this one on the right. You would just use 120 volts as opposed to 12 volts, okay? So here's how you're going to test it. You're gonna take your black probe and you're gonna put it on any metal part of the face of the water heater. That's gonna act as our ground or the point that we're gonna measure off of. And we're gonna take our red probe and we're gonna put it on the T-stat. Remember, that's the heat sensor on the top. And we're looking for something in the realm of 12 volts. If we do not see 12 volts, that means our problem is not with our water heater, but instead upstream. This is the first step of the electricity when it comes to the water heater. So if it's not even making it here, then we know the water heater is not our problem. Instead, I would look at places like our fuses, make sure all of the fuses in our fuse panel are good, check our batteries, make sure they're all charged up, and make sure that the switch for the water heater is actually in the on position. I have literally gotten calls where I have shown up to somebody saying their water heater isn't working, and all I had to do was flip a switch and the water heater worked just fine. You'd be amazed at how often that happens. So if you're not seeing 12 volts here, those are the things I want you to check. But if you are seeing 12 volts here, that's great, that's what we want to see. Then the next place we're going to check is Dora's going to go down the side and into the ECO, or that bottom heat sensor. So we're just gonna keep that black probe on the face of the tank, and we're gonna take our red probe and put it on the ECO, or the bottom part. If you look there on the right, you saw a little stick. That's actually where the electricity is going from the T-stat to the ECO, okay? So we're gonna put our black probe on the face of the tank, red probe on the ECO, and we're looking for something in the realm of 12 volts. If we do not see 12 volts, that means that power went into the heat sensors, but it didn't come out of the heat sensors, which means that the heat sensors are most likely our problem. Switch them out and we should be good to go. For any of my advanced people that know how to use the continuity test on their meter, I didn't have an exact picture of it, but you would take the wires off of your T-stat and ECO, so it's just sitting there naked. You would put 1 meter on the T-stat, 1 meter on the, or 1 probe on the T-stat, 1 probe on the ECO, and you'd be looking for continuity. Remember, that means that electricity can go through. If it has continuity, then it's good. If it doesn't have continuity, that means it's bad. And that's just a way that you can double check your work, okay? If you don't know the continuity test, that's totally fine. This 12 volt test is testing for the exact same thing. We're just looking to see, can electricity go through this thing? Can Dora make it through this? If you find that you do need to change one of these out, just look and see there's a bolt and a nut right there in the middle. You're just gonna take that nut, rotate it off, and that thing should just pop right off. You can buy these on Amazon, super cheap. Get a new one and you should be good to go. Just make sure that you're getting one for the gas side if you're looking at gas, or the electric side if you're looking on electric. They look very similar. If you see, they look nearly identical, but they are different and you can't interchange between the two. Just make sure you're getting one for the gas side if that's what you're testing. But if we had 12 volts going into the heat sensors and 12 volts coming out of the heat sensors, then the next place that we want to look is on the red wire going into the circuit board. For a Suburban water heater, the circuit board is usually hiding behind the face of the water heater. So you may need to open up some cabinets, look under a bench. I've found water heaters hiding under sinks in order to find this circuit board. But once you get back there, you should see a tan case like this. Open up that tan case and you'll see a circuit board that looks something like this. It's got 4 wires coming in on the right and just 1 big igniter on the, 4 wires coming in on the left, and then that 1 wire for the igniter coming in on the right. So we wanted to test that red wire. So we're gonna take the red probe, put it in on the red wire, and we take our black probe and put it on the yellow wire. And we're looking for something in the realm of 12 volts. If we do not see 12 volts, then most likely we just had a break in that red wire, because that's the only thing connecting those 2 points, okay? You're like, Emily, how do wires end up breaking? Mice. Cannot tell you how many times I've been like, why the heck is this thing not working? Followed a wire back and I can see little nibble marks along it where a mouse has gotten to it. But if you had 12 volts at the heat sensors and you don't have it coming into the circuit board, then I want you to start checking for a break in the wire. But if we do have 12 volts coming in on that red wire, then the next place I want you to look is for 12 volts going out on the brown wire that's heading to the gas relay, okay? So on the circuit board, red probe on the brown wire, black probe on the yellow wire, and we're looking for something in the realm of 12 volts. If we do not see 12 volts, then the problem is most likely with our circuit board, because power went into the circuit board, but it didn't come out of the circuit board. Sometimes you get lucky, and when boards die, they sometimes have burn marks on them, but not always, okay? So if you think you have a bad board, but you look at it and you're like, it doesn't look bad, it can still be bad, even if it doesn't have a burn mark or any sign that it died. They just happen sometimes, especially with water heaters where they might get wet, okay? They just short out and they stop working. But if we had 12 volts going through the heat sensors, 12 volts on the red wire, and 12 volts on the brown wire, then the next place that I want you looking for electricity is going to these gas relays. A little talk about how propane works. you can usually hear the story of how propane is going to work. You're usually going to hear a click, a tick, 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 and then a whoom. We've all heard this when things like our furnace and our water heater light up. That click is this gas relay opening up to let propane through. The tick, 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 tick is the igniter trying to light that propane, and then the whoom is the propane hopefully lighting and giving us fire. So the first step of that click, is this gas relay. So we need to make sure power is getting to the gas relay so it can do its job. I'm going to show you sort of what this looks like in real life, but I want to show you on the wiring diagram first because it's a little hard to see. You're just going to take your red probe, put it on the gas relay or the terminal for it, and you take your black probe, put it somewhere on the face of the tank. Very similar to how we tested the T-stat in the ECO. The gas valve is going to be this part here on the left of the water heater. It is sort of flipped up and back, so it's totally fine to test. It's just a little hard to get a probe in and take a picture at the same time. But if you were to take that part, flip it up so it's easier to see, it would look like something here on the right, except it would have 4 wires going to it. So you're just going to take your red probe, put it on one of the terminals for the gas valve, and you take your black probe, put it somewhere metal on the face of the tank. And you should see something in the realm of 12 volts. If you don't immediately, just try the other set of the pair. So you see we got 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't see it on 4, try it on 3. If you don't see it on 2, try it on 1. There's actually 2 gas valves in there. One is to do its job, and the other is a backup, just to make sure we don't let propane through. So we just want to test both. We want to make sure power is making it to either 1 or 2, and then also either 3 or 4. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments and I'll explain a little further. But that's power going to the gas valves. There's also, as an advance for my people that know how to use the resistance test, you could also set your meter to resistance and test across 3 and 4 or 1 and 2. Actually, I would say and. You could test across 3 and 4 and then test across 1 and 2, and you'd be looking for something around 40 ohms. Anything between 30 and 50 is fine. If you see anything outside of that range, it means that one of the valves inside there has failed and you want to switch this part out. But for the most part, again, that was just an advanced additional test you can do to double check your work. If you're not comfortable with resistance yet, that's totally fine. Or if that went over your head, that's okay. There's just a little extra bonus for my advanced peeps. For the most part, you're just looking to see, did 12 volts make it here? And then you're trying to listen for that click. If you hear that click, you know this guy's doing his job. You're good. You can also start smelling for propane. If you have 12 volts going to this guy, hear a click, and can smell propane going into that burn chamber, gas valve's doing its job. So the only other thing we need to test is the igniter, which is that part labeled 4 in the corner. In order to test the igniter, you're just going to take a pair of insulated needle nose pliers, disconnect that terminal from the igniter, and hold it close to the igniter on the circuit board. You should be able to watch a spark jump from the circuit board to the terminal that you're holding. Just make sure those needle nose pliers are insulated or you're going to get a little bit of a shock. It's high volts, low amps, it's not going to injure you, but you will go, and you're going to drop that needle nose plier. I've done it once, and that's exactly what I did, and yeah, didn't injure me at all, it just hurt. So insulated needle nose. Hard thing to get on camera, this spark, but you'll be able to see it in person, I promise. If you're not getting a spark that jumps from the igniter to this terminal, then you know that the circuit board's your problem. It's not sending the igniter or the power to the igniter. So you just switch out the circuit board and you should be good to go. But if you are getting that spark, go ahead and plug the terminal back in. And we're going to want to test the igniter that's actually in the burn chamber. This is also where you can hear for a ticking. So if you were getting that spark at the igniter, but when you plug it back in, you don't hear a tick, 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 big sign that this igniter is your problem. You can pull him out. He's usually just attached with one screw. And usually the problem, if the igniter on the circuit board was working, but this guy isn't, is that he's just not gapped properly. The spark is supposed to jump from these one prong to the other here, and if that gap is too wide, the spark can't make the jump. The way you can test that is by getting a 3/16 Allen wrench, because that's what our gap is supposed to be, and just put it in between the two probes. And that's how you're going to test the gap. It makes it super easy. If the gap's too wide, just go ahead and bend the probes back together. But if the gap is fine and it's still not ticking, I'd recommend just changing out the igniter. Again, pretty cheap. You can get them on Amazon. But that's about it, guys. That's it for our Suburban water heater. There's really just 4 parts. We got those heat sensors, we have a circuit board, we've got gas valves to let in the gas, and we got an igniter to light the gas. That's it. And as you saw, the voltage test got us through like 80% of the testing. There was sometimes another test we could do, like the continuity test or the resistance test, in order to double check our work. But the voltage test told us 80% of that story. So you may be thinking to yourself, okay, Emily, I feel like I could handle the Suburban water heater, but you said I could use these techniques to diagnose any appliance in my RV. Well, you've got 2 options for finding the pathway for whatever appliance you want to work on. Okay, because remember, we got our multimeter. We've asked ourselves, is this an AC appliance or a DC appliance? Now we just need the pathway. If I'm not there to tell you the path of the electricity for this appliance, how are you going to figure it out? Option 1, just look over the appliance. This sticker is stuck to the side of a Suburban water heater. And you'll see it looks a little different, but remarkably similar to the wiring diagram I showed you. It's got all the same parts. If you look on the top, it says high temperature or T-stat. Boom, same thing as the T-stat or ECO. High temperature limit switch, ECO, they're the same thing. You look over where it says module, there's a glare on it, so it might say 8D or 3D. That's your circuit board. You can see it's got an electrode. That's that igniter that we talked about. You can see that it has a part labeled gas valve. Surprise, it's the same thing as this gas valve here. And remember, we're starting, mine was labeled 12 volts DC in, theirs just has a plus sign. That's the start of the journey. But you could be ending your journey at any of these minus signs or at that grounding symbol that's over on the right. And then mine was color coded. They've just put letters on it to tell you the color of the wires. So that top wire is labeled R. You can look down at this key and see that it should be red. I just like making mine color coded so it's super easy to see. Remember earlier when I talked about this control box? That control box is actually for an air conditioner. If you were to find that guy and open him up, boom, on the top of him, wiring diagram. Having a problem with your fridge? Surprise, wiring diagram waiting for you right there. When you start looking, these wiring diagrams are hidden on almost every electrical component in your RV. They put them there so techs like me can have a cheat sheet to help diagnose them. But you can use them as a cheat sheet to diagnose it yourself. Just remember, you need to pull out your multimeter, ask yourself, is this an AC appliance or a DC appliance? And then just follow the pathway that they've given you. You may be saying to yourself though, Emily, I really liked your color-coded wiring diagrams and I felt like I could follow that. I don't know if I'm quite ready to follow a wiring diagram that doesn't have the pretty colors and isn't set up as easy to understand. And I want to know that extra 20%. I want to know how to be able to double check my work before I go buying parts willy-nilly. Well, that's where I'm going to pop in just a little bit of self-promo here, if you'll indulge me for just a second. I'm going to be putting on a program called RV Academy all through the month of July. It's going to be 4 weeks long. We're going to meet every Monday at 5 p.m. live, just like my workshop on Monday. And each week, I'm going to deep dive into a different type of appliance. So week 1, we're talking about tanked water heaters. I'm going to be going over Suburban and Dometic, gas only, and electric side of these tanked water heaters. We're going to go step by step with color-coded wiring diagrams, just like we did today, except we'll even go into those other bonus tests so we can double check our work. Week 2, we're diving into absorption style fridges, so you never have a week's worth of food go bad in your fridge again. Week 3, we're doing furnaces, so you and your family can be toasty and warm in your RV all winter long. And then week 4, my favorite week, because I'm from Las Vegas, air conditioning. This is why I live in a sticks and bricks house. I want air conditioning blowing on me all day long, and I want to make sure that you can have that in your RV. If you're like, Emily, I wasn't able to make it on Monday. That's why I'm watching this replay with you right now on YouTube. Totally fine. There will be replays for every class throughout RV Academy, and you'll have access to those for up to 6 months, so you can watch them either for the first time when it works for you, or over and over again until you feel like you really got it down. I also highly recommend that you watch the part of the class that has to do with your specific appliance and the brand that you have, and just sit there with your appliance and test all the parts, even if the appliance is working. That way you know what it's supposed to look like when it is working, and you can feel even more confident when things don't work because it'll look different from what you saw before. Always recommend people do that. There's going to be wiring diagrams just like this one that are color-coded, nice and big and easy to see, and numbered. So you can see we're going to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And so you'll never have to second guess what is the next thing I'm supposed to be testing. It's pretty easy to follow on parts like going from the T-stat to the ECO, but sometimes things can get a little murky at these circuit boards. You don't know where the next place you're supposed to see power is, which is why I like to number my wiring diagrams. You're also going to get access to a private community of other RVers taking this course. So that private community is where you can go and ask your questions that may come up while you're watching the replays. And you can get your questions answered either by a tech like me, or me myself, or other amazing RVers that are taking this class along with you that may have encountered your exact problem and fixed it all by themselves. If you were to call a big box RV store just once for each of these appliances, so one call for your tanked water heater, one call for your fridge, one for your furnace, and one for your air conditioner, you would rack up over $2,000 in repairs just for calling techs out. And I think that's just too much, honestly. I don't want people to have to pay that. So I was trying to find a solution for people. I want people to be able to solve all of these problems themselves. So I was like, screw it. Instead of paying $2,000 to have someone come out and hopefully solve your problem, what if you just paid less than what one call to a tech would cost? And now you know how to handle anything that goes wrong in your RV. So even if you had 2 things go wrong with your water heater, boom, you already know how to solve it. And you can help out a friend. I always ask people, once you learn something, pass it along. See if you can't help the next person out. But that's my little pitch on RV Academy. This is how I justify, or how I'm able to put out a whole bunch of free content for people, is occasionally charging to teach people a little bit extra. You can learn more about this at rvrepairwoman.com/RV Academy. The link will be in the description as well if you're interested. Classes are going to start July 8th, so doors close July 7th. So that way I know who I've got in the course. So if you do want to sign up, you got to sign up soon. So rvrepairwoman.com/RV Academy. If you sign up this week, you're also going to get access to a private Q&A with me at the end of the month. So if somehow you get to the end of July and you still have a burning question that you haven't gotten answered, either in that private community or in the live discussions with those classes on Monday, you are going to get access to a private Q&A and get your question answered by me in a smaller setting. But that's just for people that sign up this week. You're also, as a bonus, going to get access to all of my RV AC guides. If you don't know, I have step-by-step PDF guides on how to diagnose your air conditioner. I know we're in July, And so I know a lot of people are hot in their RVs and they want to know if their air conditioner is dying. And I know ACs is the last week. You're going to get access to all of the AC guides that I have day one. So that way, if you're having a problem with your air conditioner right now, we can just get it solved before we even get to air conditioner week. I have 3 of those out right now. They're each sitting at about 40 bucks a piece. So there's $120 value that you just get for signing up to the course. For my people that aren't interested in RV Academy, as a thank you for watching through this whole thing, please know that I still have those wiring diagrams for you for every type of tanked water heater, and you can get those at rvrepairwoman.com/wiring. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for rolling with the punches with some of the technical problems we had on Monday. Thank you so much for being such an awesome community, whether that's on Facebook, Instagram, here on YouTube. I think it is so cool that there's so many people out there who are trying to learn how to solve problems in their RV by themselves and decided that this little woman from Las Vegas was someone they wanted to learn from. Please keep in mind about RV Academy, and remember the link for it is in the description. Thank you so much for being part of RV Repairwoman, and remember, you got this.